So last night I cried over something I never had. Have you ever done that? It was like nostalgia, like missing something, like grieving something I didn't actually have. So I was reading this book again for like the third time. Have you read this book? The book's amazing, movie's incredible. So it's in the very beginning where Ninny Threadgood, Jessica Tandy, the old lady, she's talking about the Threadgood house back in the day, in the 19 teens or 20s or whatever it is. And she's talking, all wistfully about there were always people coming and going, and the summer nights and the parties and the weddings, and, how everyone was having sleepovers and they were out back in the pond fishing and all these like incredible community things. I guess there is actual nostalgia in that because I had a family that had that at Christmas. We had a pool growing up, so 4th of July parties were lit. So I did get like a taste of that. And clearly, I am incredibly extroverted. No, me? I'm incredibly extroverted, love people, love community, parties, all the energy and excitement and closeness that brings. So it does resonate on that level. But I just got to thinking, it was like one of those Captain Obvious moments where I was like, oh, that's what's missing. Like, that is what's missing from modern life. We don't have that. We don't gather. We don't get together as like the norm. What we do instead is we work ourselves silly just to survive. And we are so overscheduled and overstimulated that when we have any free time, we curl up on the bed or couch and we scroll to numb out or to self soothe. And this is absolutely not a criticism against the people, because when people talk about that, there's always like shame, like, oh, people are so lazy, they just watch TV. Like, it's not about that. It's about the life that we're living is not suited to the natural pace of humans, to our need to connect and be slow and live our life by the seasons and mark occasions with celebrations. We have all these, I feel that they're innate human drives, but the way our modern world is it's just like contrary to every natural impulse we have. I was thinking about this when I was on my trip recently, and at one point on my trip we were in Puerto Vallarta and we did an official tour of the old town. And initially before the old town stuff, we went to the newer area of town in the condos and the townhomes and these gorgeous mansions. And they were in these gated communities and they were like actual fortresses. And then we get to the old town and it's like I just was getting all this information about how humans have changed because of how our physical communities have changed. We are now locked up within our own fortresses, in our own homes. We rely solely on the people within that home, and sometimes not even then. As we know, with the inequitable division of labor for women, that's a whole other thing. But then you go to the old town, and it honestly was like any old town in any city in America, that there were all these little shops and then apartments above them. And then in the centers, every couple of blocks, you'd have a park or a plaza, or you'd have some sort of community. There was a church or there was a school. There were these places to go. We've talked about third spaces. We don't have enough third spaces in the US. Places to go where you don't have to spend money. They're just places to congregate and be. My dad lived in Belgium in the 1970s for a time, and he would talk about that too. How the pace of life is so drastically different when every day for dinner you would just walk down the block to the butcher, to the grocer, you'd get just what you needed, and then you'd walk home, make yourself a leisurely dinner, and there were always places to go and people to see in a very it wasn't frenetic now where we schedule and we create these huge events because if it's not an event, nobody will come, and it's just a lot. So, as we are dreaming big about the future, and that's something that came through in my session on Friday about the energies of March and the guidance of what we can do to prepare and to look ahead. And one of the things that came through was that we are being called to create the new. And the very specific words that were brought through was we need to dream big. Was it think big or dream big? Regardless, we need to dream big and then go even bigger. It was the even bigger. Go as big as you possibly can and then go bigger than that. As we are thinking about how to recreate our world, our cultural society, like everything, we can't just stop at government and what's corrupt in government and let's fix corruption. We now need to place our order with the universe. And how do we want to run our lives? How do we want to feel? What structures, what rituals, what habits, what cultural norms do we want to create going forward? What do we want to manifest and call into being? And going back to the book, I can't help but think that that's why our nation, probably the world, that's why they were able to survive the Great Depression, because they did community in ways that are completely foreign to us. I remember reading about how people who were out of jobs, out of homes, completely destitute, they would show up at someone's door and knock on the door and just say, "I'm so sorry, do you have anything to eat?" And if they did, they would let them in. And sometimes people would just send their children. They would just send their children out to do this. Now, historically, much is made of the New Deal and what FDR did, the new policies, Social Security, anyone? The Works Act, like all these different things that he did and that the government did to get our country back on track and survive this time. But I have to also believe that it's because of the people and how people pulled together and live differently. And as times are getting real dark and real bleak for a lot of people who are having a lot of fear about what's going on, at this moment in time, it's important for us to think about what change we need in the future so that we don't end up here and we don't end up in a place of our worst nightmares. Placing our order with the universe isn't just about removing the problems that we have now. It's about envisioning an entirely different way of living so that humans can finally thrive. So, as you go about your day and you find things that are working, that you like and want more of, and see things that are not, that are frustrating or heartbreaking or whatever it is, think of them in terms of placing your order with the universe and get really creative and really open about what it is you would want to see in place of what we have. What more do we want to see? What less do we want to see? And what's your ideal situation? There was another incredible part that came through in that session that was about how, as we share our ideas, they're being met by divine ideas. And they gave the metaphor of this water cycle and the evaporation and the rain, and how we are now collaborating to create the new. And I've been trying to make clips to share, but it was like, it was so crazy. So much stuff came through, and it was just like wild that it's hard to make little clips. But those are some of the concepts that came through that I'm really excited to lean into going forward. And I invite you to share with me.